that Uganda is one of the countries that are ranked as the highest speakers of English. And we had some people really were fumbling with English, so much that we had a few actually even who forgot their names. Yes, somebody is Monday and is swearing in as Sunday, and is so I think that was it. But otherwise, it was a very good exercise, ushering in the 11th Parliament.
Okay. And after that, of course, we went through the weekend, and we started the week on Monday by the voting of the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker, who are now in office. I've also not had your comments on the election of Jacob Lokorio-Lanya and Anita Mong.
Well, I think the election of Jacob Lokorio-Lanya and Right Honorable Rebecca Litwala Kadaga, of course, the contest, and then eventually the subsequent election of Olanya. If you've been following, in other words, if you look at the trends, all the trends right from SEC actually have been favoring Olanya. Why am I saying so? That in the past, we saw that Kadaga was number 3 and a member of SEC, which actually Olanya was not, that in 2016. So I think because he had that dream, he also made sure that he's part of SEC in last elections. I think also the other factor that favored him is that during elections, he was unopposed. And he could have used that opportunity to mobilize support. Whereas Kadaga was tussling get out with the Honorable Salam Sumba. Then after elections, I see really Olanya was so tight-lipped and he's vested all his faith in the party processes. And Kadaga did the balance, saying, look here, I'll use the party process as well as, yes. So also that really favored Olanya. But also lastly, the region. Yeah, Anne Makinda and Rebecca Kadaga became speakers around the same time, making history as the first women speakers in their respective country. And Anne Makinda in Tanzania, the deputy was Jacob Dungai. So when the party said, look here, Anne, you served you played your part, the person who came in was Jacob Ndugai, who was actually still a speaker. So I think also Olanya was saying, look, I think since I also came in as the deputy, and so I saw all kind of the presidencies were really in favor of Olanya. But also Kadaga coming to contest in this particular election, I wouldn't want us to demonize it. Yeah, because it raised our democracy. It also made, every other time the competition is so tight, we get to understand so many things. We get to understand who is now the speaker, what are the loopholes, what is it that we need to correct. Even also, this is a check for the NRM part also as well, that in future, how do we handle such primaries? How does the NRM party handle such primaries so that actually they don't split the party? And then finally, it exposed the opposition as well. Yes.
Don't get into the exposure of the opposition. Ndugu Tuko Karimu, thank you so much for joining us on Pan-African Friday. Just briefly from you, your opinion on the swearing in of members of parliament and subsequently electing the speaker and the deputy speaker on Monday as we saw it.
Well, thank you. It's quite interesting. My opinion on the swearing in is quite a bit of a mixture of issues. One of the issues that was clearly identical in that swearing in is that we have people who are not yet prepared for leadership in this country. You could actually see that even the mere swearing in was able to expose some of these political leaders, and I think it is.
You know, that oath, if you read it out, it only takes 20 to 25 seconds. Seconds. Yes. 20 to 25 seconds. If you just read it. 5 minutes.
The oath, and I think this. Yes. So it's something that really should be looked into. Of course, there is a saying that every society deserves the leaders they elect, because a leader is a reflection of that society. Exactly. But I think going forward, there is something that I was able to observe as somebody who works at the National Secretariat, that we must go back to the basics of ideological orientation. Because there is no way you hold a title of a national leader and you are unable to do a simple task of swearing in. It means that back home there is a problem, or within the political party there is a problem. And I think where we went wrong as a political party is the point at which we stopped the chakam-chaka. Because when you look backwards, look at the 5th, 6th, 7th Parliament. You look at the quality of the 7th Parliament and compare it with the nature of the 8th, 9th, and 10th Parliament, and 11th now. It is something worth about reflecting as a country. And I think that is one of the issues that I can be able to identify from the swearing in. The other probably is, do we really need all these numbers? 529, 100 and something swearing in every day. Do we need them? It is something that we must debate about as a country, both within NRM as a political party, but also as citizens of the country. Do we need all of these people? Or we need the best of the best and be able to have them legislate on behalf of the population or the rest of us. But also, if we are to have them, won't we be looking at a situation where we need two levels of the house, the upper and the lower house, probably, so that we have the best.
Like it is in some other countries.
Exactly, so that we may be in the upper house, we could have people we can be able to rely on. The senior people who understand the country, who understand the strategic direction of the country, should be able maybe to be in the upper house. Then us, probably the gamblers, those who have gone for employment, then those probably who don't even know why they are there, should be in the lower house, so that the upper house should be able to check the lower house. Probably this is the time we should be able to think about it. On the issue of the speakership, I think as NRM from history, right from the Bush, has had contradictions. You know, when Right Honorable Kadaga announced that she was coming as an independent, there was a lot of uproar within the political party. But some of us who do research and study the revolution, you actually understand that contradictions did not start today. They started from around the Bush period, where people could actually disagree, but at the same time be able to get back, forge a way forward and move. And those disagreements were very healthy for NRA at that time. And they were able to build the strength of NRA moving forward. And I think even within NRM, without contradictions, NRM would have been weak. If you are able to look back from the time we had the Right Honorable Mama Mbabazi, you had the disagreements with the Amanya Mushegas, the disagreements with this senior comrade who was from Isinjiro, who later became the Minister of East African Affairs, who passed on. Eria Katega, yes, in Ntungam at that time. So these disagreements have existed, but when you study carefully, you'll actually realize that every time we have contradictions, NRM grows stronger. This specific contradiction was bound to happen, because one thing I realized that people have not understood the importance of multi-party politics. When you look at the arguments, they will tell you that how can 27, I was looking at the arguments of people both on social media, 27 members of SEC decide for the rest of the country. But they forget that the same 47 actually decided in 2016 for the same position.
And they say many more other things apart from just the speakership.
Exactly. So, of course, they've decided several other issues. They decide on who becomes the government chief whip, who becomes the chairperson of a committee, and so on and so forth. So my view is that, as Comrade Amazima put it, those who want to look at this as a point of enmity, I also disagree with them, because disagreements within a political party are very healthy. How we manage them is more important. Now that, for example, the elections of the speaker have ended, how we are going to move from this point forward on managing those who believed in Right Honorable Kadaga.
There are 197.
Yes, there are 197. But there are also those who later on, because of the persuasion of the national leader, were able to vote for Olanya, but they do not believe in him. You should be able to understand that. Exactly. They voted for Olanya, but they do not believe because of the persuasion of the national leader. So I think it is important for us to understand that these disagreements are deep-rooted, but how we manage them from this point on is more critical than never before. Okay.
Well, I thank you so much, Ndugu thank you so much, Ndugu Augustine. Otuko from Mangariam. Yes. Well, I thank you so much for joining us. Ndugu Mtuta, let me hear your thoughts in maybe just about 2 minutes, and I come to my member of parliament from Songora South.
I think I'll start with where he had stopped off, the speakership and the race. It was okay, and we have been talking about this, that it was healthy for the party to have both candidates. And the most important thing is that now how to move on from there is the most important thing. Speaker Kadaka coming to contest against the political view wasn't a problem. One could have looked at it as indiscipline, but I think as a member of the party, and a member more so of a senior member of the party, has her own thinking, which should be respected, but also how now the political party builds consensus from there is the most important thing. But also looking at the swearing in, last time we were here and we were saying to these people, let alone knowing how to swear in, do they know what they are swearing? That you are going to uphold the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, and that you have to pay allegiance to the Republic of Uganda. Maybe, like he said, we need to get back to the drawing board. Civil servants, when you are given office, recently, I don't know, but in the past you were to take oath of secrecy. And that oath remained with you for as long as you remained in public service. Yes. Existent in our Office Act. Now, so you have to live by what you are swearing. But I think this swearing has become more now of just a routine, and to show that now you are a member of parliament, you are swearing in, and people, because when later on you see what members of parliament are doing, it contradicts. You really wonder if they remember what they swore to do. So to me that is the biggest thing. But of course the other thing is that these members are given the information and material for swearing in advance. You should revise to know what you are going to swear in, because you know for the first time fine, the tension and the excitement can put you off rail. But still, even when they come, there are 4 lines, I think, but you cannot read the 4 lines. How are you going to do research? How are you going to do research that is going to enable you to present on the floor of parliament arguments, and that will be able to defend them?
A ministerial statement.
Exactly.
Bring a document that is 400, 500, 1,000 pages, and you're supposed to read it, debate, discuss, and all the things.
Exactly.
Very complicated issues.
Yeah, and I've been looking at members of parliament, especially the chairpersons of the committees of especially the Commonwealth parliaments, but also the American parliament, the UK parliament. You are looking at a person, if, for example, I've been interested in the foreign affairs of those countries, you are looking at a person who has fought a war in Afghanistan, has been where, and is at that rank. So when you are talking about issues of Israel and Palestine, you have an idea of what is happening. And even when you are arguing and you are submitting, now, 11th Parliament, I don't know what's going to happen. And I'm not even thinking about the 12th Parliament. So I think there is a need to cut our cloth, because now we have more than 500. Already we're having a crisis with space. think Parliament is
they
not yet
discussed,
complete.
They agreed they all can't convene in one go. They need to know that I will bet on Tuesday, a call comes on Wednesday, then we'll take up on Thursday.
Creating parliamentary shifts.
So what happens is they should come to Parliament, not every day, to leave space for the others also. Well, but that's it. Honourable from Musongora, just in a minute, talk about Parliament, the swearing in, of course, and the Speaker. Then, of course, now we get to the issue. We talk about African parliaments and the African liberation. Now that we are going through the week of liberation, remember, I told our viewers that it was on this week on the 25th, it was a Tuesday, that we celebrated the African Union Day. It is a day that we started in 1963 at the formation of the the Organization of African Unity, which is now the African Union. So we know that the 25th of May every year is a day that we call the African Day. But just before we get to the role of parliaments in mooting and moving the agenda and the fulfillment of the agenda of the African liberation, let's start with the Parliament, the swearing in, and of course the selection of the Speaker.
Okay. First of all, I think to many, swearing in was an occasion that they had never experienced.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
here you are. You are talking to the whole world. I would think that some
all TVs.
Yes, you're on TVs. So I think that some people got fright. It is possible they got stage fright, and therefore we should sympathize with them. Of course, swearing in, dragging over 4 days also caused unease in the population. Some of us who were swearing, for example, Thursday, people were wondering indeed whether we would swear. We have seen people Monday, Tuesday, but is Tembo coming? So they would wonder, and of course, the opponents would say, we told you.
I like that.
He's not going to swear.
He didn't do the same on Tuesday. So you think he's going to swear?
So that's the other bit of the gallery in the population. But nevertheless, it went, in my view, it went well. And for me, I think we should forgive those who failed to.
Ndugu Tuko has talked about the numbers, and just look at Parliament's swearing for 4 days, about 130 every day. Then we get to another event of electing a speaker, and it takes a whopping 12 hours of a day, doing one activity, just getting a speaker of the Parliament, and it cost us the entire day. Is that really tenable?
More than a day, because it ended in the night.
Perhaps because it started about 10 o'clock in the morning, up 10 o'clock in the evening for the whole day. We're doing just one exercise of getting two leaders for the Parliament.
Well, true. I think, as Otuk said, there is a need for debate on how we manage our democracy. How do we get our representatives? You see, for instance, we created constituencies, 1 month to the vote, and a whopping 45 constituencies and MPs were added on the roll, partly because government wanted to manage democracy in particular areas and maybe creating political space to minimize antagonism at some levels. But you know, there have been debate whether we should have representative democracy or parliamentary democracy. In my opinion, I think there needs to be a population cap. How many people should vote for an MP? Because you find, I'm here, I represent, for instance, 85,000 Ugandans in Songora South. But you'll find my counterpart only represents about 15,000 Ugandans.
That's true.
Yes, so we need debate.
And you're all MPs.
And we're all MPs. we shall get the same benefits.
Exactly.
He might even jump to be somebody else more than me.
Just look actually at Kampala itself.
Yes.
Now, you have about 10 members of parliament in Kampala.
Yeah.
But you have a woman member of parliament who has voters in Nakawa, in Kawempe, in Makinge, from the central, from Ruraga, and everywhere.
Yeah.
Then you have a member of parliament who is only concentrated on just part of some Kawempe.
That's true.
Another part of Kawempe. Someone has another part of Nakawa. But they get the same privileges. Yeah. Now, the woman member of parliament has to run and rotate around all these divisions and get all the votes from everywhere. Then, the other member of parliament, same privileges, same everything, only needs to concentrate on Rubaga North.
Yeah, that's the truth. Because the district I come from, we are talking about a population of about 800,000 people. Kasese district. And therefore, the woman member of parliament has to traverse 44 administrative units. You see? Sub-counties.
At about 100,000 voters.
Actually, about 200,000 voters. So that's what I'm saying. We need to debate this so that we agree on how our representatives will come to parliament. You know, for instance, that the population of this country will double in the next 20, 30 years. You would be talking about 80, 100 million people. Are we going to split these constituencies? Sometimes I agree that we should have these numbers. After all, the population is going to double to 100. But maybe we keep it for the 100. But you wouldn't be surprised in 2050, you have a parliament of 1,000 people. How will you we will not reduce in the way we are. If we remain the way we are, we shall have a replicated parliament where you have the numbers spiraling with the population. That's what I'm thinking. Could we go per cap?
And because you are in parliament,
yes.
Ndugu Gideon,
Yes.
because you are believing in parliament, now still Otuko brought an issue here, I think it was Mututa here who brought it, that talk about the discussion itself, that you have a house where you all don't fit. Now, those who designed that house like that had a specific number. Of course, they weren't mindful maybe that we would grow on and have very many people get into the house. The other day, when we were voting for the speaker and the deputy speaker, we invoked Rule 5 from your rules, which talks about the election of the speaker. And now there was a debate just around there.
Yeah,
why don't we do it together for the speaker and the deputy speaker? But the rule is very clear, because the framers of those rules knew that you would have about 60 people, 100 people at the most, and getting a speaker out of 100 people is just an exercise of at most 1 hour. Then the speaker conducts the election of the deputy speaker. But now we still have the same rules, but now we have an exercise very rigorous, that first of all you have to take a head count of all of you who were there. Now that's one exercise. Then again, go back to the register, read name by name by name by name by name until you exhaust all the 520. Because even if every other person took 1 minute to vote, then we would need 530 minutes to just do that exercise.
True, it is true, but I think it was more with the preparedness to manage the numbers, because people knew how many MPs were going to vote. You remember there was even a time when they were saying only 320 MPs are present in the House, and all of us were already there. So the clerking, I think, had an issue. How do we know that Mujungu has entered here, that so-and-so has not entered? So there was time lost in the verification, and that's why they said, okay, let's first have call name by name, and we lost time to ascertain. You also saw later that some strangers had entered the chambers. So I think it was to do, how do we keep this tent as a house for the 529 MPs? Yeah, but it takes a lot about how do we manage the numbers going forward. Of course, on the election of the speaker and the deputy speaker, I think it also goes back to the democracy in the parties, democracy in the country. You know, much as we are talking about multi-party, few people have conceptualized, appreciated this concept. How do we move from point one to the other point? For example, the debate of how many people should choose a candidate. the rules of the party are clear. That SEC is the top organ where decisions...
It vets?
Yes, it vets. That's where the decision vests. So until you change that, then the debate is unwarranted, whether the numbers in SEC...
So, like what you were saying, the debate of only 48, you only 28, did this, that's unwarranted.
It's unwarranted.
It's constitutional.
Those are the rules. Those are the rules. And you know, I think even senior people need to learn how to respect those rules. That once the decision has been made, then it is made. And you move forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ndugu Mtuta, let's talk about the role of parliaments in moving the African agenda. Our parliaments up to that now, we've just discussed ours. It started business, or it started business. We have a fresh, new parliament with those who have been there, and just like Ndugu Gideon here said, there are those actually who took oath of office for the first time. They've never done that in school as a head boy, a head girl. They've never done it as a class monitor. They've never done it at any level. They've never done it as a guild minister anywhere. And here is where they are, standing on the steps of parliament. All TVs are with you, all radios are with you, and you are failing to even take oath of office. Now, that's a parliament that we have, or these are some of the members that we have. Let's look at parliament themselves on the African agenda.
We only get leaders. Of course, these leaders are part of us. They are not falling from heaven. So when they make some of these mistakes, it is us who are making these mistakes, because we voted for them, and that's the best that we offered. So if they cannot compete to the level of others, then it is us to blame. But when you are looking at parliaments in pushing the African agenda, first of all, we need, as Africa, do we have an agenda? As a continent, do we have an agenda that we are trying to push? Have we sat down as Africa to decide the priorities that we need to achieve in a specific time frame? We have heard many people complain of neocolonialism, of foreign interference. Not only complaining, because we have seen this happen. Last time, during his maiden speech, the President Museveni was talking about the issues of Gaddafi. He said he wished he had time with the other African leaders to at least put up a resistance against the invasion of Libya, and which finally ended up in the killing and the deposting of Gaddafi. So, but you realize that even when that was happening, some of the African countries were involved in that agenda, pushing for the removal. And many others were now having problems in Mali. We had problems in Chad. And we were blaming the foreigners for invasion, for high-handed stake. I mean, the high stakes in these countries. We have still having problems in the Congo from day one. But the problem is, does the African parliaments come together and say, look, this is what we need to achieve for Africa? Last time we were discussing something here, and we said, as Africa, can we also impose sanctions on some of these countries, even when they are not realistic, but to show our commitment that I think enough is enough and we need to do something. And of course we can do that. But the problem is that sometimes lack of national concertedness as a political group. And the other thing is that the disintegration of the political systems in Africa, because we have had countries in Europe and the US and in this Asia, some of the biggest economies, that you can have a trace of the political interests common to those countries. But here, even a political party in Kenya, like I said last time, has nothing in common with the political party in Uganda. DP in Kenya has nothing in common with the DP in Uganda. And then you realize that the disorganization, both of the political systems, but also the lack of the clear policies for even the economic systems within Africa. Find a smaller country also pursuing its own economic systems, and when it comes to even external policies, we don't have much in common. But I think the new leadership in Africa seem to be realizing this. And the Honorable Member Gideon has talked about it, but I think there is need now to consolidate, that we have people who are looking at Africa as a home and a country that we need to protect and we need to work for. And he put it, can we have some serious people in Parliament who are looking outward, not only at smaller things, and unfortunately, the President was talking about it. I think, for me, I also believe that unless we move away from these clans, from these tribes, we may take another century without achieving even what we are thinking about. Can we have a parliament, for example, which is inclined to production systems more than the current tribes? Because now people are pushing, he said we introduced about 40 members of parliament into this new parliament. But where are these members coming from? From some clan, from some district, from some tribe? Because we are running a political system which, I mean, everyone wants to be in there. And like, yes, and like I said, if that doesn't stop, we are going to have these numbers increasing every other time. But can we have members of parliament elected on a production kind of? We have farmers, we have business people, we have academicians, we have, so that may be, we can move away from every tribe, every clan, every sub-county, every parish.
And they come as professional bodies.
Actually,
somebody representing engineers, another representing...
yeah, so that maybe we can have a discussion which is more focused. But now you are in the middle of discussing some serious bill, and the next person, someone stands up, say, but I have also had a road in my constituency. What has happened? You derail back into that. To the extent that actually, I come from Bali, but now most of the MPs as of now are coming from constituencies which were initially sub-counties where the representatives were going to the district council. Now the councillors who are going to the district council are now coming to parliament. And this is the parliament we're having today. So what type of debate, and how long are we going to debate to come up with something agreeable?
Okay. Otuko, coming here, we looking at the role of African parliaments in mooting the African agenda. Now I talked about the African Dream 2063, which was launched in 2013 at the African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa, but also the African Agenda 2030. Now, when you look at the dilemma that we are having, you look at this decade, we started 2020 with a pandemic. And now, here is what is happening now. We are also at the same time, for the same decade, 2030, 2020, and until 2030, we are also implementing the SDGs. We are implementing the African Agenda 2030. But at the same time, we're also implementing the ESC agenda, which is also 2030, and we have the Ugandan agenda, which is 2040. Now, it's only the Ugandan agenda that extends for another 10 years, but yet again, we have the three different agendas that we are actually pushing: the ESC, the African agenda, and of course, the SDGs. But look at the parliaments that we have, look at the composition, the members of parliament, and maybe the continental parliament, not forgetting regional parliament. Do you look at these as those that have the mantle? Can they anchor us into achieving the agenda as Africans?
My answer is a yes and no. I want to analyze it in two perspectives. First, beginning with home. I want us to examine our own parliament in advancing the African agenda. Then after that, I would love to take it to the region and eventually Africa. When you look at the composition of a parliament, you have NRM, you have NUP, you have FDC, and other political parties. About 3 or 4 opposition political parties represented in parliament. Then you have independents. By random sampling, you're a journalist. I want you to make a trial one of these days by just sampling some of these MPs across the political parties, NRM, and you ask them, what is your view about Africa? You'll be shocked that they are completely blank. They do not even believe that they are in Africa. It doesn't concern them. So this takes me back to the point I made. When the president talks about the challenge of ideological orientation in Africa, people seem not to get what he's saying. This is exactly what he's saying, that we must look at Africa as our own place, and we must make it a better place that we want to live in. What we must accept is that we must get back to debate the tenets, the procedures, the underlying factors, the qualities of some of these leaders that we need to have in the African Parliament. The president is talking about his idea of a better Africa is that he believes that because of the African diversity, we cannot easily have one Africa. So he says, let's have regional blocks. The East African Community, the ECOWAS, and SADC, and all these others. And he believes that when these regional blocks become strong, Africa will be growing towards a stronger dimension. Why does he believe so? Because he thinks that when the regions become stronger, then they can now come together to form a stronger Africa and start speaking much stronger than this. But this comes with a big task for leaders. When you go to scan around African countries, we have over 50 countries, and you look at how many of those are looking at Africa in that perspective, that we have a strategic direction of Africa. Very few. You can actually talk about the late John Pombe Magufuli. You have a Ugandan president talking about this. I have had our comrade in the East, Uhuru Kenyatta, talking about this. The Ghanaian president. They're actually accountable. There are less than 10 presidents who have this kind of thinking in Africa. And at some point, before the president of Sudan actually got deposed, he had started thinking that direction, because we now started relationships. Bashir. But also the other factor that we must examine is who is funding these regional blocks, for what interest? Because when you actually get to dig deeper onto the funding of these African blocks, we still have neo-colonial invisible hands funding these organizations. And I think by that fact, it is also wrong, because we are not moving to the direction. Because
we can't fund our own initiatives.
Exactly.
Somebody else has to do that for us.
We have all the money, but I do not know why African presidents or African parliaments cannot be able to appropriate money deliberately for these regional blocks without relying on borrowed money, without relying on the donor funding. And I think this is where it begins from. Because when you are able to self-sustain, when you are able to fund yourself, it gives you the audacity to speak with authority. But now if, for example, in East African Community, most of the projects are funded by European Union, you cannot speak with authority, because you'll be scared that when I speak like this, the funder will withdraw. And I'm also aware that at some point, I think from beginning of this year, Yala MPs had finished almost 7 months without salary. Why? Because EU had not funded them. And then the other factor is that the lack of commitment from the African countries to be able to remit their subscription into the East African community. These are signs to show you that going forward, if we don't take these things seriously, we may not be able to achieve the African agenda.
Okay.
Yes. Now, when the other thing I want us to examine is whom do we send to the Pan-African Parliament? Because this is where the
That's
debate.
the question.
Because
Yes.
they have 5 nominees,
Yes.
they have 5 that
Exactly.
are sitting there.
But
we have Okoto Gong, we
Yes.
have Bangirana Kawoya,
Yes.
we have Eric Musana from Buyaga,
Yes.
we have Oshabe Nsamba, Oshabe Patrick Oshabe of
Yes.
NUP,
Yes.
and some other lady from the NRM.
Achayo from Mora.
Achayo from
yes.
Mora.
So to me, I think we do not take these things serious, because you see, the question is, what is their level of understanding of our strategic mission in in the Pan-African Parliament? Because this is where the debate starts from. The Pan-African Parliament should be able to start generating debate, so that African parliaments start seeing the direction the Africa should go. But if we take these things as a deployment for allowances, if we look at them as a tour, we are wasting time. Yeah.
Well, hold it there. Thank you so much, Ndugu Augustine Otuko. He's a researcher from the NRM Secretariat and also member of, you call it the
Campfire Ideological
the Campfire Ideological
Study Group.
Study Group.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us here. And it's just 10 o'clock now, but we'll take a break. And when we return, we'll continue the discussion, discussing the role of Parliament on promoting or moving the African agenda that we talk about, the African Agenda 2030, and we are looking at parliaments now, starting with our home parliament, which took oath of office last week and elected the speaker this week, and of course business commences. We want to see where they are. We also, in that same meeting, the first sitting is when the speaker of parliament, the Right Honorable Jacob Lokolo Lanya, told us of the 5 nominees to the Pan-African Parliament. But what do the people even know about the Pan-African Parliament?
Yes.
I think when we return our call, we'll talk about this Pan-African Parliament, because people knew, we are now known about Yala, not about what Yala does, but because we could tell that Bide is in Yala, so-and-so is in Yala, Dora is in Yala, Nakawich is in Yala. So somehow people know about the Parliament in Arusha. But how about this Parliament in the Midlands in Johannesburg? We'll take a break and return. Remember, we are with the Clever and Hill. They are boarding a primary school in Tisaro Chevando. Let's take a break.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
We've cut and reduced our MTN Momo withdrawal rates. Now you can withdraw mobile money at the lowest rates. You also get MTN Century Points when you deposit, send, and withdraw MTN mobile money. Visit our Momo agents countrywide and withdraw mobile money at our reduced rates from 1st May 2021. Everywhere you go, MTN.
What does it mean to be closer together? It's taking the last bus home for a surprise visit. Closer together is strangers finding a connection. It's bringing home something much more than a box. It's the warmth of home, or the beginning of something new. There's magic in sharing the things that we love, because it's those things that bring us close together.
Echa COVID-19 chija kugwa. If we get vaccinated now, observe social distancing, wear masks properly, sanitize or wash our hands with soap and water regularly. Together we can defeat this enemy.
It's no secret that ICT makes learning easy.
The strides made in our field could not be possible without it.
And now we can watch our favorite show.
My radio is my best friend.
UCC provides an enabling regulatory environment and policy guidance for healthy competition. We also facilitate ease of doing business in the communications sector through licensing, standardization, spectrum management, tariff regulation, rural communication development, and consumer empowerment. An informed consumer is an empowered consumer. UCC supports local content and innovations. Driving the development of a robust communication sector in Uganda is Uganda Communications Commission.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
Well, a very good morning. My name is Jaganda Semakola Zikusoka once again, carrying on for the next hour. Again, here on Pan-African Friday, talking about the role of parliaments in the African agenda, or in affecting the African agenda. And with me in studios is the Honorable Member of Parliament from Bosongora South, Honorable Jungu Gideon. I have Mututa James with me in studios. I have Ndugu Augustine Otuko. He's a researcher at DNRM Secretariat, and he's from Ngariam constituency in Katakwi district, and of course Akol Amazima here with me. Akol, when we took a break, you were coming on next to first of all let the people know what is this particular parliament that we talk about before we even discuss the credentials, the Pan-African credentials of our representatives, because the 5 here that we saw are the ones who are going to represent Uganda. Now when they go to the Pan-African, when they go to PAP, they are not going as NRM, they're not going as NUP, they are not going as anything. They are going as Uganda. And we just need to look at their credentials to see how much they can actually represent us at the Continental Parliament. Welcome again.
Well, thank you very much, Ndugu Jagenda. I think before I can get into their credentials, I just wanted slightly to look at the role of national parliaments in shaping the African agenda. Yeah, because one of the things that actually is election of representatives to regional and continental bodies. For example, now the 5 who are going to represent Uganda, of course they are from within Parliament. And next year in 2022 they will be also electing the 9 EALA representatives from Uganda. So that becomes now a key role in building the regional blocks and of course the continental organs. But of course, as you had said, in Uganda, people are well conversant to know the EALA members of Parliament as opposed to our Pan-African representatives, because the EALA members of Parliament campaign. Yes, NRM will hold primaries, all parties will hold primaries, and people, it creates that awareness. But now here, these are picked by parties. Actually, I'm sure others were surprised at who are these people. And they are picked from within members of Parliament. The members of EALA, it is people from outside Parliament, they campaigned and voted for the members of Parliament. So there is that kind of real. Then the other issue is that the EALA members of EALA legislators it's a full-time job, whereas the Pan-African Parliament, actually, it is not a full-time job. Now, when you look at the Pan-African Parliament that sits in South Africa, it has basically organs, and maybe I'm not going to say all of them, but I just want to get out the 2. We have the plenary. Now, the plenary consists of 5 members from each member state. Now that the 5 we sent are going to join the 5 from other countries, that is the plenary. And then we have the bureau. The bureau consists of 5 members. the president of the Pan-African members, and his 4 regional vice chairpersons. So that is now the bureau. Because the bureau is more of a full-time job, because they see to do the day-to-day.
It's secretariat.
Yes, like no, there's also a secretariat.
There's also secretariat.
They have also secretariat, but they have a bureau. So that's how they go about their business. Now, getting back to the representation here in the representatives, I wouldn't wish to read the book by its cover because I would not interacted with most of them. But you know, they say a good day is seen in the morning. And I wish to say that Mama Cecilia Ogwal, who was supposed to be with us here today, but unfortunately she lost a relative, has been one of our, actually the immediate former, is among the immediate former group that has represented at the Pan-African Parliament. She has been there with the likes of Amongini Jacqueline. Amongini Jacqueline worked at the Global Pan-African Secretariat for some time. And she was into youth politics, she was in UNSA. So you realize that she was somebody who was grounded. Mama Cecilia Ogwal, her credentials are not questionable. Now, we also had Mary Mujenyi. Mary Mujenyi, before going to the Pan-African Parliament, she was member of Parliament for Nyabushozi for some time. She even became state minister. That even when she was sent to the Pan-African Parliament representing Uganda, she was one of the 4 deputy presidents. So you can see it depends on now whom you send there, so that perhaps when they are there, they are also elevated. Now we see that in some countries, for example, the Pan-African Parliament was established in 2004. And in 2004, you realize that the crop that went there, the person who was the first president of that Pan-African Parliament was Gertrude Mongela, who was from Tanzania. Because when you look at her credentials, she had actually served in various capacities, both foreign and internal in Tanzania. So these are some of the issues that when it comes to those kind of serious levels, we should always send people who are serious. Now, and still, when it comes to the issues of the regional and continental organizations, you know, this is how we lost it out when we were electing the head of the African Union Commission, where we had presented Dr. Specioza Wandarakaziwe. Kenya had Amina Mohammed and had others. Now, the question that was actually very, very keen in Kigali was that yes, whereas the region had said let us support our own in East Africa, but she could only speak English proficiently. The African Union has 5 working languages. Amina Mohammed from Kenya would speak all the 5 working languages. She would speak Portuguese, she could speak Swahili, she could speak Arabic, she would speak English and French. Now, I think this is also as a country now, for strategic interest, we must embrace bilingualism. We should encourage that if you're to have an advantage at that level, at least try to learn a language or 2 more apart from English at that particular level. Now let's go to Yala. Let's go to Yala here. That we remember when it was at our time to have the speaker here back in Uganda, just like we saw. The NRM primaries, we had Dora Byamukama, who was the official NRM candidate. But I think when they reached Arusha, they realized that Dora Byamukama was not popular. And the Margaret Zwa came as an independent, and she won. But again, I still will see midway, she also didn't complete the term. She did complete the term. She got problems. And when she got problems, you see, Burundi was saying, look here, it's like Ugandans, you're not ready, we are ready. We are and it took the intervention of Honorable Shemba again, who was then the state minister, said, no, look here, it's Uganda's turn. And now the question was, between Opoka, because actually between Opoka and Dan Chidega, who takes it, and then Honorable Shamba again, it settled on settled about Opoka. You're from the opposition. This is an NRM issue. That's how Chidega came in. So at all levels, we must always have people who are up to the task, so that we really don't get issues that are going to embarrass it.
Looking at this parliament, if I come to the member of parliament from Songola, the parliament that we have here, do you look at it as a parliament that can debate or that can help us achieve the African agenda? Like I said, we have the SDGs and we're supposed to implement these. We have them and we know them. Now, when you get into our budgeting processes, because why I'm talking about parliament is Ndugu Gideon here, they will of course let us know that at parliament, they're in charge of appropriation, they're in charge of legislation, they're in charge of many of the things, the policies and all the things. So you notice that even when the National Planning Authority comes up with the NDP, the National Development Program, which is 3 now, the NDP 3 that we now have, you notice that it's still approved by the members of parliament. And because they look at it and say it is considering the SDGs, it is also considering the Vision 2040, it's considering many of these things, because it's not just a domesticated document for only us. The parliament here, do you look at it as that parliament that can help us achieve the bigger agenda of Africa?
Well, I can say yes and no. Yes, in a sense that if they are given proper induction. You remember the Chief Justice, when he was handing over to Olanya, he did say your people need a lot of induction. And indeed, every parliament, the first time they have an orientation to take them through. I'm also saying no, because the rate of turnover at every election is high. Now you look at this parliament, about more than 60% are actually new people. So, and I know most of them are just going to learn on the job. By the time it comes to 1, 2, 3 years, it's when they are now beginning to appreciate this and time. And by the time they enter into the 3rd year,
they are knocked out.
No, they are not.
It's an election.
It's now they have entered the election window. They have to go back to the constituencies, and you get, so they may not
and even knocked out not to return again.
Or maybe also knocked out not to return. So I think the issue here is that. The parliamentarians, but also the other issue is that, as somebody was saying, when you look at the current parliament, you realize that about 60% of the people are fortune seekers, actually treasure hunters. That the issue is which for deal, there's this, there's the other deal. So people are upcoming, they are going to be very serious. You'll find that they are very, very few who can really understand, appreciate that our strategic interests as Uganda, our strategic interests as the region, and our strategic interests as a continent are these. So really, I think that is where the dilemma is. Then, of course, the other cancer of when they say if you want to hide any information from an African, put it in the book. Yes, so
thank you. Ndugu, Honorable Mujungu, Gideon, coming back to you here, is as first and foremost, well, you're going to get us to on that particular one, but when Akol was talking, I picked up something. Is there any parliament in the world, on the continent, that is as lucrative as the Ugandan parliament? Because to get a position in parliament, to just get elected to parliament in Uganda is the epitome. It's too lucrative that you can even trade your family, you can trade your children, you can trade your wife, you can trade anything to just get this position. You're a member of parliament. Is it anywhere on the continent that it has to be a do or die for you to get that before you even talk about its role on the African agenda?
Yeah, I think it depends on the dynamics in a particular country. One, getting a slot in the National Assembly is a high order process. And I doubt that it is only Uganda where you have to dip into your pocket in order to achieve it. The problem only in Uganda is that we have centralized many processes, many things, because of our mindset of deals, corruption, to the extent that I fear that one of these days, even my son is going to ask me to first pay him when I send him for an errand, because of the mindset in the country. Yes.
Your son, but your wife.
Even my wife.
Even your wife can say.
Yeah, my wife would, but my son is a biological link with me. So I don't think Uganda is the most expensive process to go through to go to parliament. But I agree, true, that it's very expensive, very costly to get there. And therefore, you need to recover. But how do you recover?
That's the question.
How do you recover? That's a question of another day. But gentlemen and our viewers, I wanted us to look at when you talk of parliament in Uganda, parliament in Kenya, in Ghana, these parliaments are an epitome of the society where they come from. And the society we're talking about, the African society, was a communal society only 100 years ago. Even 70, 60 years ago, many Africans were going naked, for instance. Many Africans 100 years ago were food gatherers and hunters. And with the opportunity of education, thanks to colonialism, we have had Africans who speak other languages other than their mother tongue. They are speaking English and realistic to be in parliament. So I want us first of all to sympathize with our situation that the MP you have comes from that background. And even his formatting as a national leader is not complete. When I'm here, I most likely look at myself as a representative of the people of Songora South. And it wouldn't surprise you that I may not care to bother what's happening in Kotido. This morning I was reading, there's an incident that happened on Fort Portal Kasese Road. A military vehicle knocked a small child who was crossing the road in water. And it became a scene. The man never bothered. He went, he drove off and it took about 40, 30 kilometers to arrest him and say, why? Why do you drive this far? Why do you take care? So, first of all, as MPs, we need to look at ourselves as a caring leadership, as leaders who have been charged to be responsible for this country. And so when we sit in parliament, we execute our role with that perspective. My brother here said maybe we should go back to the drawing table and say, okay, let's draw MPs from workers, from farmers. That would be taking us to the 50s and 60s.
We're going back.
Yes, we are. Yeah, you know, we shouldn't go there. First of all, that's the model that the Americans adopted. The workers against the capitalists, the owners of capital and the workers. That's the DP versus the Republican Party. And it was easy to cut because industrialization had created a distinction between the two. The capitalists, the owners of capital, the owners of the money, want to promote and protect their interests. And the workers who were working in the factories also needed to ensure that their welfare is catered for. So that's the background. The poor communities, the blacks, the Hispanics, the worker population and the worker whites are in DP. While the rich class, the white community, dominate the Republican. That's why now in Uganda and many African countries, it becomes a serious debate. What is a political party? What is this political party that promotes me to parliament? The concept of a political party and the ideology my brother Otuku was talking about is hazy for many of us. They're not clear.
It's not clear. It's ambiguous.
Yes, even many of us, the players, we are more of players who want to occupy space, as people are saying there. So, we need to go to the drawing board. One, the ideological hospitalization as a country. What are our common interests as a country? NRM and their president has emphasized that we need to transform our societies from the peasant community that we have across the country to a modern community who are in services, who are in factories, who are in working class. I'm sure none of us here, when you look at your mother or grandmother, you understand this. Many of our relatives are with the whole. How do we move away from there? So, when I come to Parliament, what's my mindset? Am I articulating for a handhold or for a tractor, which I don't have in my constituency, which I don't have in my home? That's the background. So, I don't agree with the fact that even if we said, let's draw our parliament from the professional organs, it wouldn't work. After all, our experience is very clear. The workers have been in parliament since 1989. Have they measured better than me, who represents the peasant?
But you see, the workers that we talk about here come from trade unions, and not all professions here are categorized in unions of sorts.
A trade union, I'm talking about a trade union of teachers, for instance, of metal workers in industrial area. And we think that these represent people who have moved away from the whole to the service sector. Have they articulated better than a Mujungu who comes from Songora South? So, that wouldn't be the issue. But for me, the issue is, what is our ideological orientation? As a country and as political parties, how does one political party distinguish itself from the other?
Exactly. Now, actually, before you even get to the ideological orientations of the parties or the different ideologies of the parties, now let's look at the composition of the Pan-African Parliament, for example. That we have 3 from the National Resistance Movement Party. They have a different ideology as NRM, if they even know the ideology. Now, you have one from NUP, yes, who has a different ideology from what NRM ideology is. Yes. And you have another who was now the choice of the speaker, Eric Musana, from Buyaga. Yes. I don't know which party he actually subscribes or belongs to, but I'm looking at them now, because they now go to Johannesburg as Ugandans. Yeah. Now you have Oshabe, who believes differently from Achayo, from Bangirana Kawoya, and from Okotogong. But they're going to go and represent us. Now, do we have this particular Ugandan ideology that we can differ in the national parliament here and say, because I am NUP, I will oppose or took of NRM on this particular policy or issue? But when we get to South Africa, we are for Uganda. Do we have a particular Ugandan agenda that we can actually go with? When we go to Yala, and we are NRM, UPC, Independent, and DP, do we have the same agenda for Uganda at Yala, or we even carry our NRM, we carry our UPC, we carry our anything to the regional parliament?
Yeah, they will not, because of the ideological disorientation right from day one. We have the National Development Plan, for example.
NDP3 now.
NDP3. In principle, this is the package of the country.
For the next 5 years.
For the next 5 years. And therefore, all of us, the players, irrespective of the political party, we ought to associate with this. But it wouldn't surprise you that because I'm NUP, and I think this paper was done by NRM, and I'm opposed to NRM, it is not my paper. It's not my paper. So, most likely, when I move out of the Ugandan borders to South Africa, I will not want to associate with anything NRM. And that's what I'm saying. as a country, who are we? Where do we want to take Uganda in the next 10, 20, 30 years? And I think that's where NRM has an edge over other political players, because they have an ideological definition of what Uganda they want to see, which Africa they want to see. We are yet to hear that debate in the other political groups. That's why it would surprise you. Here, we in the center, let me use this example. If we think that NRM, the policies of NRM are not developing the country, and therefore we need alternatives, and I'm in a constituency X around the central, and my friend who's there is FDC, and I would think that this FDC maybe is articulating correctly as an alternative government to NRM. Why would I stand against him and defeat him? Nay, why would I shift from FDC to NUP, from DP to NUP?
Same.
You can see that that erratic transition in the political arena. Over last year to December, people shifting positions. I think it shows the lack of ideological clarity on the part of some players. Therefore, our friends at PAP, the Pan-African Parliament, may not measure to our expectation in the parliament in South Africa. But we are not alone. Look at our neighbors in Kenya. If you look back, since the days of Moi, there have been reforms and reforms in the constitution, not because the people desire it, but because the principals desire it. The players say, I think for us to move forward, we create an environment which can accommodate player X. You've seen it. Even right now, there is a reform underway, although the courts blocked it.
The BBI.
Yes. So, it goes back to where we come from.
Okay. Ndug Mututa, we have a parliament in Ghana that has two political parties and with equal numbers. You have the NPP with 137 and you have the NDC of John Mohamed Ramani with 137 with just one independent. Now you can look at that parliament that if there is a position and say, for example, now they have a speaker actually who is not coming from the ruling party. Now the speaker is from the opposition. And you're looking at that parliament where you have equal numbers. It's not an issue where you say, these ones, the NRM are very many, that even if you even don't discuss on anything, then they will force their way in there. You look at a parliament where it is, in my language, we call it etwani ketwani, man on man. You know, it's like a football game that you have 11 players the other side, you have 11 players the other side, you have a neutral person here who is a referee, and you know that they have a goalkeeper, you have a goalkeeper. So we need to do anything best to ensure that we actually penetrate them and take a ball into the net. Now, but you have a parliament here that has, you just talked about it and said it has even redefined what opposition is in this country. That I saw on one of these social platforms where one member of parliament, the Honorable Zake for NUP, saying, I am one of those invalid votes because when they're voting on that day, there were two invalid votes for the speaker. One had the choice of both Olanyi and Kadaga, so definitely that was invalid. Then the other presented the name which was alien to the contest. Now I heard Honorable Zake say it was actually him, that his colleague from the NUP nominated a candidate of the FDC. But when he went to vote, we could think that maybe that was the NUP position. NUP nominated FDC, and because we are opposition, they are opposition, we vote for them. Now, Honorable Zaket says, me when I got into the ballot paper, I think he wrote People Power or NUP or something. Now, eventually, that was a rotten vote. It couldn't count. Just looking at the different parliaments elsewhere,
in comparison to our parliament and mooting the African agenda? Ndugu Mtute.
And he has partly discussed about it, that lack of a clear ideological orientation is as dangerous as you can imagine, because a person is a survivor, looking for survival. And that was, again, my point, which he alluded to. Why are we electing people who actually don't believe in what the mandate that we are giving them, but rather searching for ways of survival? We have heard, you have talked about Ghana, where we have the two parties, the two strong parties. Of course, there are others. We have it in the US, where we have two strong parties. We have UK, where we have two strong parties. But even then, that doesn't prove that those are the best, I mean, the democratic, because there is a lot that is desired to make a system democratic. Not even frequent elections. Not even the 100% turnout, because we saw recently in Congo, Brazzaville, where the turnout was, I think, the president got about 100% the vote. But what is the national agenda for our members of parliament, for our leaders, for our elected officials, right from grassroots? What are we pushing? But again, you also need to look at the establishments, the political systems. What does the movement in Uganda believe in, which NUP does not believe in? What is common about FDC and NUP, or FDC and a movement? Do we have anything in common in form of the national agenda setting? If someone is crossing the floor just 3 months or a month or a week or a day after you lost, do you have anything you stand for in your political party? So these are some of the questions we need to look at. But at the same time, do we have what we believe in? Because we have seen most of these political parties were a facilitation to an individual to win an election. That you now begin calculating, if I'm going to go in FDC, how popular is FDC in this constituency, in this particular area? Or I should go as an independent, because if I go as a NUP, do I have chances of winning this election? So the calculation is based on how best to win an election, other than what the population believe in as a way of achieving what they intend to achieve. In other words, our electorate, I think, has been left bare, and that theirs is to vote. No wonder you have to pay them handsomely, because that is the only contract that exists now between you and the voters. After that, it is finished, and they're going to wait for the next 4 or 5 years to come. So I think political parties have a big role to play. First of all, Uganda itself as a country has a role to play in helping stabilizing some of these political systems. That we don't have to leave it to whoever it may concern, because we are building institutions that have, at the end of it, deliver our national interest. But we cannot do so when everyone still believes the way he does. We need something in common. What do we want to achieve? And it has to be across the board. Whichever political shade you are in, there must be something that we are looking at. If we are saying that we have a developed Uganda in the next 25 years, and we want to have it A, B, C, D, then how do we, which mechanisms, which tools do we have to help us achieve that dream? And these tools have to be spread across the board. Then we can hold the government in power, whether today we have the movement, we should hold the movement accountable to what we need to be achieved. But now, most of our political systems today, the political parties are choosing Museveni over staying in power. Like it's one of the things that we need to achieve as a country. I think that's not one of the things. But even if you removed Museveni having stayed in power for all this time, without having a program that's going to deliver this country to achieve what we want to achieve, still you will go still the same, because I've seen it happen in other countries. Thinking that the leaders in power are the problem is not enough, because they also found other leaders who were there anyway. We have seen this happen. Your friend in Nani, when he overthrew this Gabugo, and they thought he was becoming a dictator, and he comes on power, and at this time even has become worse. Ouattara is becoming worse, because he's pushing things which you wouldn't expect him to do. So in other words, our leaders are not the problem. The problem is elsewhere, and we, as Africa, we need to identify our common enemies that we can be able to push an agenda for our nations. For me, that's why I'm believing that part of the problem is the way we have so much clustered the electorate, that having more numbers in parliament is not enough. Of course, actually, today we are realizing that having more of these numbers is becoming counterproductive, because the cost of maintaining this big parliament alone, you are now going to buy them cars, you are going to be facilitating them to move. Last time I told you, when I was passing parliament, I found there are 20 buses. Of course, there are more, but parked there now. I'm like, even if parliament had every day a trip to make, do you need all these 20 buses really? Maybe there was something better that we need to look at as a country. So we need to consolidate our national priorities. Okay. Today, as we speak, I think there is less. There is a very thin line in terms of democratic segmentation. When you look at what does the movement stand for? Of course, Honorable Gideon has been telling us some of the things that the movement needs to look at. But we also have had issues of shifts along the way, that you are beginning this program, but then you realize you may not be able to run it to conclusion because corruption has come in, or many things have changed, and then you have to shift to where we think it can work. The system has tried several programs, but then we cannot run them to conclusion, because I think that somewhere we lose track. But even then, we also want the opposition to come up and give guidance, because being in opposition does not mean that you always have to oppose everything, because we have also seen people who have been in opposition, but they also later on take leadership. So if you are not going to agree with anyone or everyone, because you want, we saw this even as they were swearing in. Some people were coming with umbrellas, some people were coming with chains, some people were coming all funny things. There must be a difference of you being an activist and being a leader, because now you have passed that. But
now, to qualify for leadership, you must be an activist. In Uganda, activism is actually the pathway to leadership. And the unfortunate bit of it is you get to leadership as an activist, and you stay an activist even in leadership.
Exactly. We have seen this actually. We saw even last time when the president was talking about something which almost put him in a way that he is to remain a rebel even when it's in the government. So some of these things happen. But I think for me, the bottom line is that let's have the opposition, but let's also agree on certain things. Being and the opposition also need to know. Someone was, and we discussed last time, was saying for her she doesn't want to swear in under the government of President Museveni. Now, what are you going to do? Are you going to resign from your position as a member of parliament because Museveni is in power?
No, that was then. I think there was some excitement. She took oath of office after President Museveni had sworn in, because it was Museveni who did the swearing first. then the others came.
So it is also good to raise leaders. Political parties have the role to raise leaders who are aware about the environment in which we are operating.
Ndugbo Tuko, we might demand so much from the Pan-African Parliament, for example, but we know that its constitution, the way in which it's constituted, it has a protocol that limits it more to an advisory body as opposed to a legislative arm, like you see here. From I think when it started, they've not passed any single law. Theirs is more of advisory. They just give advisory to the subsequent, to the different governments they're in. At Yala, yes, we've seen Yala pass laws here. They've done this. They've enacted. They've really tried to do that. With the parliament now, that in the minds of people is a parliament is a legislative body. And one of its cardinal roles is to form and make laws. Now, if we have a parliament that is limited to by consultations, that is limited to just giving advices, would we demand much from it? Because the parliament that we talk about is a parliament that links us directly to the African Union, because it was an African Union formation. Do you think we can actually achieve what we want to achieve? The Agenda 2063, the Vision Dream 2063 and the Agenda 2030?
Thank you very much, Comrade Jagenda. My colleagues here have clearly stated most of the things. But before I answer that question, allow me quickly pass through something. That for us, our parliaments, our political parties build into our national parliament. Then our national parliament builds into the region and the continent. But when you examine the manifestos of the different political parties that participated in the recent elections, you'll actually realize that most 95% of their objectives are localized. Probably in some political parties, 99% of their agenda.
Domestic affairs.
It's about Uganda, local politics, and how to get Museveni out of power. Then, when you examine these manifestos, like some of us have done, you'll actually realize that there are only two political parties, 2 or 3, that are tempted to talk about the region and Africa at large. And that is the NRM, the ANT, and these other manifestos have just a paragraph or 2 that are talking about the region and so on. And to me, that is lack of seriousness, because when you're a political party, whether you're in power or not, one day you never know you will be in power. People must know your agenda. People must be able to see the direction that you want to take them, because probably that will people will buy into that idea and be able to give you support on the basis of your future agenda. That shows you the lack of seriousness, first of all, locally, by the political parties. In other words, we have a lot of work, first of all, at home to ensure that we build the understanding of what the African agenda is in the local political parties before we look at the region. Now, what we must also agree as Africans is that we must have a convergence point. In all our differences, we must have a convergence point. What unites us as Africa is very important. For example, or alternatively, before we look at what unites us as Africa, we must ask ourselves what unites us as Ugandans. If we believe in different political parties and Uganda is attacked by aggressors, must opposition celebrate because Uganda has been attacked by aggressors? But the answer is no, because stability, security and stability is a product for all of us. We all consume it.
It's a common good for all of us.
It's a common good for all of us. So we must be able to define as Ugandans what unites us. Then as Africans, what are the issues that unite us. And one of the issues that really unites us is the sovereignty of African countries. Should any African country be attacked by any aggressor, Africans must be able to unite and work, coalesce forces around that country.
When President Museveni was swearing in on the 12th, some people listen to his speech, say, now he was talking about African issues and attacking the Europeans and doing everything, apart from talking about our children who are in prisons. Now those actually who expected President Museveni to come and address them about who is in prison, who is where, and who is where, and they didn't understand him. He talked about Africa, talk about, you know,
that's the extent of the problem. Because some of us who have been following the issues of African continent, we saw that as a very strong message, because he is talking about the strategic direction of Africa, and he's trying to rally African leaders and say, look here, we must not sit back when one of us is attacked. That's why he gave an example of Gaddafi. He was actually trying to tell those who had come for his swearing and those who were not there that next time, if there is anything like this in Africa, we must resist
We'll not wait to see what
we must
Gaddafi
resist it as African countries. And I think I agree with him, because we should not be pushed by imperialists to a direction that we do not want to go as Africans for their own selfish reasons. Coming to your question of Pan-African Parliament, you see, for you to be an advisor, you must be knowledgeable. You must be strategic in terms of thinking. So the quality of the advisors in the Pan-African Parliament must be super. So in other words, the political parties that nominate individuals to the Pan-African Parliament must nominate the best of the best. Why should they be the best of the best? Because they are the ones going to define a direction that Africa must take. Because for you to go and sit and discuss, you should be able to come back and make a presentation to the to the Ugandan Parliament or to different African parliaments and say, for us as advisors of African parliaments or African governments, we think this is the direction to go. And this can only be possible if African, those parliamentarians who are sent or who are picked by different political parties to go to the Pan-African Parliament,
they should be looking at a lot of things.
They should be able to be, they should be wide in terms of knowledge. They should be able in terms of networks to understand, in terms of influence, because for you to be able to advise, you must also be able to influence, so that your decisions, that your proposals that you're making about African countries should be able to be adopted by different governments. So to me, my thinking is that for now, African countries are not taking that into consideration. In terms of selecting the best.
Now, you've made a very good submission.
Yes.
That when you're playing an advisory role, then you need to be high up there in knowledge yourself.
Exactly.
Because the decisions or the advice and the consultations that the members of PAP do are what actually informs the African Union. Now we've put you where we all come to at the end of the day. So you need to be there when it's just fun, and you need to. Ndugu Akola, our time is running out. You wanted to
I wanted to say one last thing. You see, just to give an example of where our problem locally is. When you look at Kampala, Wakiso, let me say central Uganda, there are individuals who have stayed in parliament for 10, 15, 20 years. But when you look at how they get there, you actually realize that they move according to the wave of that time. It's not about the values of the organization they believe in. It's not about the things they want to do for Uganda and Africa. It's about the wave. When they see that maybe Besigye will help them get to parliament, you will find them with Besigye. If they see that Nope is the one that is of the type, they will jump there. So I think that is lack of consistency.
So it is Nope now. We don't know what will be there by 2025. Akol, do you have a specific question that you can ask any of these gentlemen, Ndugu Otuko or Honorable Mujungu?
Well,
as you make your final submission.
Yes, of course, my final submission, if I can really get a question to the two guests, is that I think what the African parliaments have succeeded in doing how do you call it, is perhaps having the leadership in those particular parliaments, indigenous. Because at the time of, not only the leadership, even the composition, because at the time of independence, I just look at the 3 East African countries. At the time of our independence in Uganda, the speaker was the European. And then the next person actually who took off for him was an Indian, of course a Ugandan of Indian origin. So was the case in Kenya, so was the case in Tanzania. Here actually we had the Patel in Uganda, and in Tanzania they had the Karimjee. But now, why Kenya and Tanzania a little bit moved very fast in terms of developing their national assemblies is that they had stable speakers. For example, in Kenya, they had Honorable Fred Mbati Gideon Mati, who actually was speaker for 18 years. So he was from 1970 to 1988. So he made sure that he strengthens the institution of the speaker and the legislature. Now in Tanzania, they had the Mkwawa. Yeah, Mkwawa was actually speaker for about 28 years. Yes, so Mkwawa was the grandson to Mkwawa, the other king of Were. So which privilege we didn't have here, because we had Rugumayo coming in for only 1 year, and then we had Francis Butagira about 5 years, and then things changed. Now my question to perhaps it's to Honorable Tembo Gideon. Yes, in your capacity as a member of Parliament, how do you intend to move the African agenda or the Pan-African agenda in the House? Then coming back to Otuku, of course, as somebody who works with the research desk of NRM, NRM is known as a Pan-African party. So how do you strengthen the Pan-African within the party? How should research help in advancing the Pan-African agenda of NRM?
And with the 17 million, that you have 15 million, with the 17 million members that they pride about, do they even know what Pan-Africanism is? As one of the pillars of the national resistance movement, or they only become members of the NRM when they are going for party primaries. Ndugu Mtuta, your final submission, and ask the gentlemen, either or, a question or two to just manage our time. We have less than 6 minutes, and we need to be out of studios in these 6 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Time has run, but we would have wished more to discuss with this, especially the Honourable Member of Parliament. If they are prepared to cut down on this Parliament so that the 12th Parliament will be at least less, or now that in government we are moving towards fusing some of the departments so that management is streamlined and the wastage of resources and the deployment of manpower is systematic. Can you also have a parliament to have some of the constituencies merged so that we can have a more effective parliament, that in the future we are not talking about 1,000 members of parliament, but relatively a reasonable number that we can such a,
can represent us and the issues of the country.
And can such a motion really go to the floor of Parliament?
You'll use 2 minutes, Ndugu Gideon, and Otuku will use the last 2 minutes, then we'll get out of studios.
First of all, on the question of how do I want to promote the African agenda. First of all, you know that one of the tenets of the NRM is Pan-Africanism. It's a principle we believe in, and as a representative and as a member of the 11th Parliament, I believe in that concept. First of all, it is the only strategic way we can advance the African society, inclusive, Uganda inclusive, but also a strategic way how we can protect Africa as a continent. So if we have to survive, if our children have to survive tomorrow, if our governments have to survive and resist neocolonialism and imperialism, the way to go is to strengthen the African agenda. Two, my brother here,
on downsizing.
On downsizing. You know, these are debates that require a national discussion.
And you don't see that coming on the floor anytime soon?
I'm not, well, I can't say now because I've not been there. I'm yet to be oriented. The party has a way which approaches these strategic decisions. But as a Ugandan, I would want to see that debate come up in the near future, so that we set a limit to what this parliament will be today or tomorrow, so that we know it is predictable. Otherwise it will spiral. And of course it eats into the national resources in terms of taxpayers' expenses.
Okay. Thank you so much, Honorable Mujungu. Finally from you, Ndugu Otuko.
Yes, my comrade here asked how do we intend as a political party to champion Pan-Africanism. I think NRM has been one of the best in Uganda in terms of advancing the interests of the African people. And as a political party, our fourth principle is Pan-Africanism. And we do a lot of tutoring, lecturing on these, around these issues. Every time we raise cadres, part of the agenda is to ensure that we instill the discipline of Africanism among our people. And as a political party, we are still into discussions on how we can get back to a massive ideological orientation so that many more people can understand what we intend to achieve in the African mission. But for now, for the meantime, what the party has been doing is formation of study groups. And these study groups are in all over, they are littered all over the country. You find them in institutions of learning, in communities. And when facilitators go, for example, from the party, they go and lecture about African interests. And I think that's how we have been able to advance this as a people. But I think we have all as Ugandans, we have a responsibility to ensure that we rally people in the region, because even within the region, there are people who do not still believe in these things. So we must be able to help our region, and I was happy that our neighbors from the West yesterday, from DRC, were here. And this is part of the African agenda, to ensure that we improve trade, we improve relationships, we improve security, so that we have a better Africa. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you so much. Otuko Augustine, he's a researcher at the NRM Secretariat and also a member of the Campfire Ideology Study Group. Thank you so much for having allowed to spare your time to be with us here on the Pan-African Friday. And thank you so much, the Honorable Thembo Gideon Mujungu, Member of Parliament for Busongola South in Kasese District. We also thank you so much and wish you all the best in Parliament, and to implore that you keep the African agenda high there. As, of course, you also promote the Ugandan agenda, because we only have 20 years to achieve our Vision 2040. And we pray to God that we will be alive to see 2040 and how it will look like. Thank you, Ndugu James Mututa, for again being here every day. And thank you so much, Ndugu Akol, the team of the Pan-African Friday. Thanking our producer, Farouk Aluwama, and of course all the technical team that has made this possible. We thank you so much and wish you all the best for today. We'll turn next week on Friday for the Pan-African Friday again. My name is Jagat Semakola Ziksok. On behalf of everybody here, I'm saying good morning and bye for today. A blessed weekend. Thank you.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra. Pick of the day on UBC, brought to you by
Their job